day to all. In the spotlight seat today, I'm thrilled to have Dr. Dolores Fazzino. Dolores is a lifestyle and a wellness coach, a nurse practitioner, intuitive counselor, speaker, and an author, as well as a retreat creator and leader. Welcome, Dolores, and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Dorothy. It's just wonderful to be here, and I so appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you as well.
Awesome. I would just like to share a quick story about the great humor of the universe before starting here. When I first received the email from Dr. Fazzino, I was sitting at my computer and I just said goodbye to my husband as he was going off to visit a neighbor for the first time in 23 years that we have lived here. And his name is Tino Fazio. I looked down at my email and I see your name is Fazzino, and I just had to look up and I had to laugh and say, how do you guys do this? I just loved it.
Well, I just love the serendipity of the universe as well. And, it's just a reminder that they're with us all the time. You just have to be aware and be, I want to say, tuned into it. Because they're always there, they always have been. And I think as our humanity is evolving and growing, our frequency and our energy is raising up to be able to access that a lot easier than what it had been, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yes, definitely. Could you start by telling us a little bit more about yourself so we have a good idea of what you're all about?
Oh, sure, Dorothy. I'm a nurse practitioner and I have a doctorate in nursing practice. And what that means is that that's the end educational track for an advanced practice nurse, like a nurse practitioner or a clinical nurse specialist, a nurse midwife, a nurse anesthetist. And so with that, I've always been interested in educating and learning. As you could tell, my parents used to say my nose is always in a book, but I was always interested in things that were out of the normal, that I operate on the fringes of, I'm comfortable there for some odd reason. I'm on the edge all the time. I've always been on the edge in my professional career as well. And, I love creating programs where there's gaps in healthcare. And what has been really instrumental is that there's a huge gap in healthcare in regards to our healing capability. Western medicine is really good at looking at 25% of the whole holistic approach to healing. That's the physical. You either get a diagnosis, a pill, or a procedure, and, maybe they'll change your diet or give you some nutraceuticals, some alternative herbal remedies. But it keeps people segmented, so it keeps them in a loop and never gets to the root cause of what created that physical illness. When you look at the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects, that's the other 75%, which, as a lot of us know, if that doesn't get addressed, doing all this stuff physically will get you to a certain degree of wellness, but not lasting wellness. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the underlying issues, maybe it's an emotional blockage or something that you've never had forgiveness about, or it's still, you never grieved the loss of somebody, or how you deal with your emotions. Really, there's a correlation of how that kind of matrix into the physical and your physical health and wellness. So I work with people in that aspect, and I really believe that when people grasp those concepts, it's the ultimate of self-care, extreme self-care. Because we're in charge of ourselves. People seem to think that they could blame somebody else on the outside, but ultimately the foundational piece for self-care is knowing that you are the master of your own ship. You have a medical team within you that knows all the answers, and you could heal yourself. Mm-hmm. Those are foundational things that people they knew or they had amnesia about and they stuffed it away someplace, but they've somehow lost sight of that and they give their power away to something outside of themselves. So I really love working with people to get them back on track with what's right for them. Because since we're all uniquely different, you cannot standardize a protocol like Western medicine tries to do and says that everybody fits into that. It's like taking the whole beautiful plethora of a fruit salad, which every different fruit represents every person in humanity, and trying to change that whole fruit salad into an apple. You just can't do that.
Right.
And it's, what I love is that there's so many choices and opportunities. What's going to work for you, Dorothy, may be something completely different than it's going to work for myself or my neighbor next door. But that's the uniqueness of having so many different things. And too many choices, maybe? No, you align with what you're being drawn to and that you follow with that, because those are pieces of your puzzle. And it's just teaching people how to trust that inner voice to make those right decisions for them.
Beautiful. Can you tell us about your retreat that you offer?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm really excited to announce that I'm putting together a 5-day retreat to majestic Mount Shasta in Northern California. I don't know if anybody's ever been there, but I know a lot. It's a very powerful spot in the world where they believe that's one of the chakras, the 7 chakra places in the world. And if you've never been there, it's extremely powerful. You don't have to do anything. Just being in the presence of the mountain starts all this activation and attunements and inner healing that you're going to be experiencing. So it's the perfect backdrop and setting for this retreat. So I call this, extreme, the 5 pillars of extreme self-care, because this is part of a book that I'm writing right now, and it talks about the essential pieces that are important to have a solid foundation of self-care, because so many of us take care of everybody else, put everybody else first, give from an empty cup, and we're going to, on this retreat, learn how to fill our own cup up and give from the overflow of that continuously. So you're not being deprived or emotionally burnt out, or even to the point where you're resentful of having to do things. Because, when people are constantly giving and giving and giving, some people get resentful. Some people start developing an illness for themselves because they have, removed so much of that inner essence from themselves. They depleted themselves, and they don't know how to refill that in order to become complete and whole within themselves. So this is what the retreat is all about. We have a venue that is in McLeod, California, which is at the base of Mount Shasta. It's this beautiful, historically it was a lumber town that probably about 50, 60 years ago closed, but it's still there. And what's so beautiful about it, from the freeway, it's about 10 miles in. So you're driving down these beautiful forest-laden roads, and all of a sudden this little village appears. And it's just very magical. You could feel the energy, and it's got a lot of charm, and there's a lot of good power spouts around that. So, I'm looking at the, Stony Brook Inn, which has a little conference center, and it's an old bed and breakfast with a lot of quaintness to it, and it's a perfect idyllic setting for the retreat. And what's really beautiful about this retreat, in 5 days you're given educational information plus little exercises, but we have some surprises along with that too. We're going to have an evening of sound healing with gongs and crystal bowls. And then we're going to have an outing one day to a sacred site with a well-known woman in Mount Shasta who takes people on an inner journey to the inside of Mount Shasta, which, for some people who are not aware of it, there is an etheric city called Telos there, which is part of Lemuria. And she's able to take people there etherically in a group meditation, so they get to experience that. But she also introduces them to their star families. So we all have star families. A lot of us have come from different places in the galaxy to do our mission here in this lifetime, because planet Earth was in need of some excess help. And then, there's also going to be a fire ceremony. A friend of mine who is a retired physician, but also a shaman. We're going to do a fire release ceremony and a bunch of other wonderful things. So it's really an all-encompassing, getting the mind, body, and the soul, and also the earth, the air, the wind, and the fire elements with it as well. And so I'm just so excited to be able to bring this to people, because I know that in my journeys going up to Mount Shasta, it's been extremely magical. And it's accelerated my own personal growth into the essence that I really feel the need to share this with others, because when you get to the point where we all in our lives have had these fleeting moments of, oh, this is wonderful, and then we go back to whatever, and we think that's the miracle. When you're living in the miracle every day, it's awesome. And so that's what this retreat is really all about.
It sounds magical, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Now, who will this retreat benefit most? Who does it serve?
Well, that's interesting. I feel that it's, certain people are going to be called to this. It's usually people who know of Mount Shasta, have never been, and know that they need to go there, but it's just, the right opportunity hasn't showed up for them. Because for me, Mount Shasta has been on my radar for 20 years, and finally, last fall, I finally made my first trip up there. So it's like, I think it's a timing thing, so people know about Mount Shasta and the magicalness of it. It's like the mountain calls you, and when you're ready to listen, you're going to show up. So it could be anybody of any age range, but I think people who are going through major shifts in their lives and are feeling a little, I'm going to call it wobbly, meaning like they're not really sure what's next for them or how to maneuver through, or not really sure how to get where they need to go to their next step. This is a beautiful bridging to get you there and to lead you to where you need to go. So it's really open to anybody who is that calling. It could be people who are male or female, or people who are going through relationships, career changes. We're seeing a lot of career changes where people are they're kind of disenchanted with corporate world the way it is, because corporate world too is going through a major paradigm shift. And I see this in the healthcare industry, and I've been in it for over 40 years, and it's going through its own metamorphosis right now. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of people who are rethinking their careers and their paths, and trying to find out who they are as a soul and be able to move forward in alignment with that purpose versus what society has deemed necessary for them. So I hope that answered your question. So it's kind of nebulous, for lack of a better description.
Yes, that's perfect. What kind of a shift could a person expect, or what kind of feedback will you be getting from people at attending?
In the past, I've gotten wonderful feedback. This is not my first retreat. I've had several in the past 4 or 5 years. And the clarity that people receive as to what's holding them back, but also how to move forward from that point. It's like uncovering those unconscious nuggets and bringing them into consciousness so you could see them. And once you acknowledge them in a conscious state, it's like flipping switches. It's that quick. So it's like a quick transformation. Also having an idea of, and being inspired to explore what's next for themselves, instead of having this anxiety and fear and everything else. It's about gaining clarity, feeling more empowered, self-empowered, but also an inner knowingness that they can handle anything that comes their way.
Beautiful. Could you share your contact information with us?
Sure. Right now, I'm getting ready to launch the registration site, and I wish I had the link for this, which is really unfortunate, but I'm going to give people the, where is it? Right here. I'm going to give them the work page link. It's going to be Mount Shasta Retreat, and it's going to be on the spiritualwellnessforlife.com /events page.
Okay.
And the registration is open, and the beautiful part of that is I'm offering two separate programs. One's a general admission and one's a VIP admission. And the general admission includes what we have already discussed, what that retreat's going to be about. And the VIP, what makes VIP different, they'll be able to have a one-on-one session with me privately before the retreat, either if they're in Southern California personally or by Skype or Zoom, to get them honed in on what they want to work on while they're on retreat. I also have a John of God crystal light bed, which is it's a chakra lamp, basically, that balances out your energy field, and they're going to be able to have an hour on that, and I'm going to have those up at the retreat as well. And also they get, with the other 7 VIPs and myself, we'll get together and have a VIP dinner as well. So it's a little extra TLC with that, and so there's 2 options, and we have the early bird pricing, which is going to be from now until October 31st for both packages. And within those, people can either pay in full upfront or do a payment plan. We're offering that. Mm-hmm. Or if they really want to save extra money, is that they could get a bank check and just send that to me directly, and they'll save another 3% off the top of the admission, so I don't have to go through a credit card thing.
Okay.
Yeah, which so I like to pass that on to people because it's just like, hey,
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know you could do that.
There's many options.
Yes.
Sometimes too many.
Yes. Do you have any final words or a final message to leave with us today?
Yes, I do. And for me, I like to lead by example. And all I could say is that we are loved more than you could ever imagine. You are never alone, and the universe has your back.
Beautiful. It's been a real pleasure interviewing you today, Dolores. Thank you for all that you do to shift our planet, and thank you for bringing us your insight and wisdom on this podcast.
Thank you, Dorothy. I'm just delighted to be part of it. Thank you for asking.